I'm Bella Lexi, and I'm here for the Anthony Rogers Show, and we are about to walk into Chicago Exotica.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Sean from Smile Empty Soul here in beautiful St. Louis, Missouri at Firebrand Recording, which is a wonderful studio here, tracking our new record, Swan Song, which will start to be released one song at a time here in probably about June, and then the whole thing will come out at the end of the year. So keep your ears peeled for it and check it out when it comes out.
So I'm Dennis with the Anthony Rogers Show podcast. My question for you is, what would you do if you became president to help the working class?
Well, I think the principal thing right now is housing. That the price of housing is going up, and it's beyond the reach of most American families.
Along with oil and gas and food.
Inflation is hurting everybody. And inflation is more complex. I can't say that I'm going to stop inflation overnight. What I can say is that I'm going to stop the long-term cause of inflation. I'm going to unravel the war machine. I'm going to reduce dramatically healthcare costs by ending the chronic disease.
Hey, it's your favorite comedian, Anthony Rogers, live in his tour bus, yeah. But also, you need to get a beard like this. People have been talking. They said your shit looks whack. It looks weird. They can't tell your pronouns. You need to get a beard like this right now. And the only way to do that is by using luxurious bastard beard oil. Great smell, great function, great everything. Just get this. And there's directions on how to use it if you know how to read. But use the link in the description. Go to the website. Use promo code LEGENDARY. Get a discount. Do it. Thank you. Bam.
Hi, I'm Danny from 710 Glass. Come check my shop out. This is our Capone rig. 10 mil joint. Smoke out of his head.
I'm AJ over at 710. This is our Puffco selection. This is a Peak Pro. It is completely Bluetooth compatible to your phone. You can control it completely from your phone. Lights, how long you want your session duration, what you want it to burn at.
Hi, I'm Jay at 710. Come check out our large selection of American hand pipes and American made glass.
Dude, we have everything.
Welcome back to your favorite podcast in the entire universe. My name is Anthony Rogers. Today we have an interesting show on a bunch of cool subjects, that we're just going to go right into, I guess. What's up, Brian? Thanks for watching. Yeah, if you're some of the hundreds or thousands of people watching the Rumble right now, thank you right now. That's good Rumble numbers. Also, if your X is doing pretty good too recently. I remember when the show used to just be like 20 people watching like live, and now it's like thousands cross platform. And I really appreciate that. And thank you for spending your Tuesday like watching this. You don't have to. There's other options. What's up, Jenny? Glad you're here early too. We're gonna bring the guests right in though, and talk about some cool stuff I've been nerding out about all week after booking him. Dr. Bradley Nelson, how you doing, brother?
Hey, fantastic, Anthony. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, no, thanks, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Time. You're one of the first doctors we had on here, so I don't know if it's good news for you, but it's good news for I feel you're going backwards in your career. We're going forward with this conversation, so it's good to have you.
Yeah,
so let's get right into like the interesting part that I was trying not to ask you prior. So like dumb down the emotion code for me if you would. I know that's a crazy thing to ask you, but like dumb down like kind of what the emotion code means and like if you would for us before we start for context.
Yeah, well, have you ever used that phrase emotional baggage?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like we often use to describe other people, right? And the reality of it is emotional baggage is a real thing. And it causes all kinds of problems for us. Now, this is a new understanding. This is new knowledge, but what we know now is that emotional baggage is a big cause of physical pain, for example. Most physical pain is actually being caused by emotional baggage. And I'll explain what emotional baggage is in a minute, but emotional baggage is also a huge underlying cause, the single biggest underlying cause in my experience. And I've been doing this for 35 years. We've certified 13,000 people around the world to do this work, but anybody can do it. But we all have been finding the same thing, that emotional baggage is the biggest underlying cause of things like depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders and self-sabotage. But it's also a big cause of things like infertility and asthma and digestive disorders. And it's also, what's really amazing is that every disease process that I've seen now in 35 years as a holistic doctor has had an emotional component. And I believe there's always an emotional component to every disease process. So, I mean, if you're diagnosed with some kind of a disease, there's an emotional piece of that puzzle. And you may do everything else right. You might take all the right vitamins and, get lots of rest and plenty of sunshine, exercise, everything else. But if you ignore that emotional component, everything else may not be enough to get over it. So
what kind of led you to
yeah.
this? So what kind of led you to this? Sorry, not to interrupt.
No, not at all. Well, I had a really interesting experience starting off when I was 7 years old, actually. I was really sick with the measles, and my folks had been in bed for me on the couch upstairs in our house near their living room, or in the living room near their bedroom, so they could keep an eye on me. And I remember at age 7 listening to them talking, and I knew the plan was I was going in the hospital the next day and into something called an oxygen tent. Well, that night, my folks came into the room. Everybody else had gone to bed. And I'm lying there on the couch feeling really sick and feverish and just nauseated and ill. And my mother said to my father, honey, will you kneel down with me and say a prayer for our boy so we'll be able to get well? So they did. And knowing my dad, it was probably the first time in my life that I actually heard him pray, but I think they were really worried about me. Measles can be serious. And in the middle of this short prayer, something amazing happened. This change began at the top of my head and it went through my body to the soles of my feet. And I was instantaneously made completely well. Now, when something like that happens to you, you can't forget it. It's like it's burned into every particle of your being because it's so impossible to go from being really sick one moment and then the next instant to be totally well. So that taught me at age 7, a couple of really powerful things. It taught me that there's a higher power we can draw upon, for one thing. And it also taught me that healing doesn't have to take a long time. It can happen instantly because it happened to me. Well, about 7 years later, I ended up with kidney disease and there was no treatment available medically. And it was about a 50-50 thing if I was going to survive. My kidneys were fighting for survival. And if they died, I was done because they didn't do kidney transplants. They didn't do transplants of any kind back then. It was a long time ago. And so my folks took me to see some old time holistic doctors, and they started working on me, and I could feel my body responding right away. And within about 3 weeks, I was totally well. And I decided, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a doctor like these guys. And they practiced out on the edge of town in the middle of a wheat field in Great Falls, Montana, where I grew up. And I figured, hey, they were in a trailer house. That was their clinic. And I thought, hey, if I need to practice in a clinic on the edge of town in the middle of a wheat field, that's okay. Because to me at 13, that seemed to be the natural habitat of doctors that knew what they were doing. Because these other doctors in the big, expensive clinic, they didn't have anything to offer. But these other people did. And so then fast forward about another 7 years or so, I suppose. And I was in college, took a class on computer programming. I just needed one more class to round out my schedule. And suddenly I was in love with computers. And so I became a programmer, taught myself. This is back in the early 80s when people were they'd buy a new IBM PC and there was no software. So they didn't know what to do with it. So I'd go into people's businesses and I would look at their flow and then write some software so they could at least, use their computer. And I had a business called the Computer Tutor, which I thought was really clever. And, Yeah, I had a great time, actually. It was really fun. I thought, man, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And then I ended up going to school again, and I was going to get my MBA, my master's in business. And we went home to Montana, my wife and I. We had a little girl. It was in the winter of 84, 85, I guess. And we're sitting around with my parents, and my father said to me, "Are you sure that you don't want to go to chiropractic school? Because you've always wanted to do that. And seems like a great career." And I said, "No, I'm going this other direction. I'm going to get my MBA and go to work for, some big company." He said, "Well, why don't you think about it one more time?" So he caught me at kind of a funny moment. I thought I had my life figured out, but he threw me this curveball. And so I thought, all right, well, let's take a look again. And so my wife and I made up a pro and con list of these two potential futures. And they were both pretty long. I still didn't know what to do. So that night, we prayed about it and asked God to help us get some guidance. And that night I had this experience where I was awakened 3 times. And each time that I was awakened, my mind was full of all these thoughts about how great it is to help people naturally and heal people naturally and so on. And I would counter with something like, well, yeah, but the new PC has, 16 megabytes or something, something ridiculous. And so the next day I still don't know what to do. And then the next night praying again. And then I got this really powerful answer. And I was awakened 3 more times on the second night. But each time on the second night, the feelings were exponentially more powerful. So that on the third time, on the second night that I was awakened, the thoughts of service to mankind and humanity and the whole world were just absolutely overwhelming. And right then I heard a voice that spoke to me, and it said, "This is a sacred calling." And I thought, okay, I accept, I'll do this. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I believe that life is sacred, and our bodies are actually temples. I had an experience that showed me that that's actually true. And so life is not what most people think. It's divine. We're divine beings. Well, so anyway, when I got into practice, I developed this habit of asking for help, from God, because I figured God's gotten me into this. Maybe he'll help me. And so it was just a totally private, totally personal habit, just a momentary pause. I wasn't saying anything out loud. I never told any of my patients I was actually saying a prayer for them, but I was. And I'll tell you something, Anthony, there were times during those years when someone would come in to see me and I didn't know how to approach their problem. And I'd offer that silent prayer, and information would just flood in. When God wants to pour knowledge into you, he can. That didn't happen very often. I can count those times on one hand over all those years. But it taught me that, that higher power, God, people call God different things, source energy, creator, the universe, whatever. I think it's all the same thing, probably. But that higher power is definitely aware of us. And so in my practice, what I learned, first of all, okay, think about this. I'm a computer programmer, right? That's what I've been doing for quite a few years. And so when I was in chiropractic school, one of my instructors, I'll always remember this. He's up at the blackboard. He's talking about the brain, and he's kind of riffing on how the brain's a computer. And I'm sitting there and I'm actually programming the admissions office computers at the school I was going to. So I'm still really into it. And he's saying the brain is a computer. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, the brain is a computer. That makes sense. And I thought, I wonder if we'll ever have the technology to be able to access the brain and ask it questions and get information out of it, because it must know everything. It's in touch with everything in the body. It must know what's going on with people. And I thought, wow, that would be an amazing way to help people, right? To ask their internal computer what's going on. And I remember clearly thinking, probably 200 or 300 years from now, we'll have that technology. Little did I know that's exactly what I was going to spend my whole career doing, unraveling and unlocking this and breaking the code on this internal computer. And that's what the emotion code and the body code and the belief code are all about. And to understand how the emotion code works, you have to understand that the body is energy, right? To us, our bodies seem solid and 3-dimensional and so on, but we know that if you could remove all the empty space from everybody's body on Earth, they say you could fit all 7.8 billion people in the world into a box the size of a sugar cube. and there'd still be room in there, which is wild and mind blowing to us. People, very, very smart people have said some very interesting things. For example, Albert Einstein, probably 100 years ago, said, the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies. And I think at the time he said that, nobody except his closest, geek buddies who were doing quantum physics had any idea what he was talking about. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, right? Probably the smartest guy that ever lived, or two of the smartest people. And so, I mean, if you look at your hand, for example, you've seen that hand before. If you put your hand under a big enough microscope and you're magnifying and you zoom in past the level of the cells, past the level of the molecules, eventually at around 1 million times magnification or more, you're looking at a single individual atom. And if you look inside the atom, you see, oh, there's really nothing actually in there. There's no real substance there. It's just energy. And so that's what we are. And the next atom's a long distance away. Well, so what the emotion code is about is it's about finding emotional energies that have become trapped in the body. Sometimes we go through intense emotional experiences. And those energies, an emotion is an energy. An emotion is a frequency, right? And every emotion is different. Anger is different from grief, and that's different from frustration, and so on. They're all unique, but sometimes emotions are powerful enough that they can become trapped in the body. Literally, this is what our emotional baggage is. See, it's these emotional energies from these experiences that we've gone through that we would rather not have gone through. And now those energies are trapped in our bodies. Now, see, in my practice, gradually I was able to learn how to access the subconscious mind, which is the computer system that is running our bodies. When you go to sleep at night, your conscious mind shuts off, right? But the subconscious mind is still there. And that's keeping air moving in and out of your lungs, creating millions of new cells every minute, trillions of chemical reactions every minute. And that subconscious mind of ours is, I believe, is so vastly intelligent because it's divine in origin that we can't comprehend it. And all we can do is look at the body and we can catalog things and we can see what the subconscious mind does. But as far as understanding it, we're not any closer to understanding it now than we were, 100 years ago. And that's because it's divine in nature. We're divine beings. And we're finally waking up, I think, in many ways to the true reality, right, of the world and who we are really, and so on. So in practice, anyway, what I found was that all my patients, no matter how young or old they were, no matter what they were suffering from, whether it was something physical or mental or emotional, as I learned to talk to the subconscious mind of my patients, and we teach this in the emotion code and the body code and so on, what I found was that emotional baggage was the number one biggest reason for the problems that my patients were having. And I found that by releasing that emotional baggage, those energies, changes could happen right away.
How would you suggest like getting rid of the emotional baggage or whatever terminology within somebody? Like, are there easy ways like the layman or somebody watching could do without an expert, or is it something you have to do with an expert? And like, what are kind of the methods of the madness, or for lack of terminology?
Yeah. No, you can absolutely do it yourself. In fact, the emotion code is a method that the entire method actually is in the book. Okay. So you can learn the entire method from the book, and you can
Do you have an audiobook up too of that?
Sorry, what?
Do you have audiobooks of those two on the internet?
Yeah, they're both on audio. Yeah,
I'm gonna check that. I'm
absolutely.
gonna check out some audiobooks of that, or an audiobook of that rather.
Yeah, in fact, let me tell you a story. I was at an event, and a woman was talking to us, telling us about a few years ago about she got the emotion code book, started reading it, and her son started reading it, and she had it on audio. He was listening to it, and he started practicing with his friends, and she thought it was cute. Well, a couple of weeks go by, and one day the phone rings. She answers the phone, and the woman that's calling identifies herself as the mother of one of her son's friends. And she says, "Listen, I got to talk to you." She said, "My son has had a severe phobia of water all his life. You know, you can have a phobia to anything. He had a phobia of water. And she said it's been very disruptive to his life and to our life as a family. We've tried everything, taken him to everybody. She said, right now, I'm at the community pool and my son is out playing in the water with the other boys for the first time in his life. She said, your son did this.
Was it repressed trauma or like what was
I don't know. It was a trapped emotion, something. And anyway, those two boys are only 11. And so that's how easy this can be. I don't have any idea what caused it, but he had it all of his life. So, it may be that in the womb, he was maybe delayed getting out of the womb, maybe, and felt like he was gonna, I don't know. Or maybe he had some kind of experience where he felt like he was gonna drown or something. Typically, that's what will create a phobia. You have some event that happens to you, and anything can create a phobia, but usually you can get rid of a phobia with just one or two trapped emotions.
interesting? Okay, like so anything could cause this, like something that's unprocessed typically, or like what is what keeps an emotion like bottled up rather?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, what happens is before we experience an emotion, there's always some kind of a stimulus that precedes that, right? Maybe we see something or someone says something to us. We read something, we hear something, we think something. And then what happens is a certain emotion starts to be felt. And there might be physical sensations that go along with that emotion. There might be thoughts that we might think that are attached to that emotion. And we're kind of going into this emotional, what we call the emotional loop or the emotional experience. So we start to feel that emotion, and normally what happens is we kind of acknowledge the emotion and then we let it fade away and dissipate its energy. The loop closes. That experience now is over and we're ready for the next emotional experience. But sometimes what happens is we interrupt that little cycle. Maybe your dad was a rageaholic, and so something happens to you and you start to feel the emotion of anger, but you don't want to go there. And so you stuff that emotion, and that creates an open loop. So now the energy, yeah, exactly. So the energy of that emotion that was trying to manifest now is kind of in suspended animation in your body. So another thing that happens, sometimes we experience things that are just really traumatic. You lose a family member, or your pet dies, or all kinds of things can happen that can be kind of intense, and emotions that are really intense can result in an open loop as well. And sometimes, more commonly, what we do is something happens and we decide to really amplify that emotion. We decide, by golly, I'm not going to just feel a little bit resentful. I'm going to really feel resentful. And we amplify those feelings ourselves, and we get really upset. And that will also create an open loop. And so the crazy thing about this, Anthony, is that a trapped emotion, we believe, is literally a ball of energy from about the size of a baseball to about the size of a softball. And these can lodge anywhere in the body. Let me tell you a story to illustrate. I had a guy that came into me one time years ago when I was in practice, and he had really severe low back pain. It was between a 9 and a 10. And I started testing him and asking questions. And remember that within each one of us is this computer, this subconscious mind, and we can ask questions. And so if you can imagine, what I'm doing with him is I've got him holding one arm out parallel to the floor, and I'm asking questions, and I'm getting strong arm tests as I press down. His arm is strong for yes, and it's weak for no. And your listeners and your viewers can try this at home. All you have to do is just have someone hold their arm out and then have them say their name is their name. Like, for example, if I were there with you, if you held your arm out parallel to the floor, and if you were to say, my name is Anthony, I could press down on your outstretched arm and you'd say strong, because that's a true statement. But if you were to tell a lie, like my name is Bob, if I press down, then your arm would be weak. So your listeners and viewers can try that. And that's, that's kind of something that seems funny, but actually what it is it's a way that we kind of tap into this internal computer. So I'm asking questions of this guy's subconscious mind. And I asked, okay, do you have a trapped emotion that's contributing to your back pain, which is really severe? And the answer was yes. So then we have a chart of emotions that looks like this. This is, this chart's in the book. There's 60 emotions on the chart divided up into 2 columns and 6 rows. And so, I'm asking questions. Well, is this emotion in column A? I get a yes. Is it in one of the odd rows? No. So is it in row 2? No. Row 4? Yes. The first emotion, there's anger. Is the emotion anger? Yes. And so then I asked a couple more questions and found out this had happened 20 years before. Now, his subconscious mind tells me this. I'm muscle testing to get these answers. And I find out it occurred 20 years before. And all of a sudden he says, oh, yeah. He said, I know what that's about. And he told me that what had happened was he was working at this company and was kind of wrongfully accused of cooking the books or embezzling, something like that. And he was really mad because he was totally innocent. And so he was wrongfully accused. He was really just furious about it. And that emotion of anger was so big, it didn't get processed, and the energy got trapped in his body. So now, 20 years later, he's got this energy, this ball of invisible anger, which it sounds so strange, but that's how this works, in his low back. So I took a magnet and just swiped down his back a few times to release this. And his pain level went from a 9 to a 0, just like that, gone.
Wow.
And he keeps walking around in my office and bending over and twisting this way and that way. And he's like, where'd it go? Where'd it go? It's gone. And I was grateful that it worked so well. Well, a couple of days later, now, first of all, think about this. When you have a trapped emotion, wherever it's lodged in the body, and these can lodge anywhere, what they do is they create this distorting force on the energy field of the body. Okay. And because the body is just energy, when you distort the energy field of the body, you're interfering with the chemical reactions and all kinds of things, blood flow, lymph flow, chi energy flow, and so on. So when I released that energy, all of a sudden the pain was gone. And this is not at all unusual with the emotion code, to see pain disappear or reduce a lot. So the interesting thing about this is a couple of days later, he came back in, and here's what he said to me. He said, Dr. Nelson, my back pain's still gone. He said, I still can't believe it. But he said, when I came in here, I had another problem I didn't tell you about. He said, for as long as I can remember, I've basically been what you'd call a rageaholic. He said, I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids. I'm always, getting in fights, and I've got to watch road rage, and I've been to anger management. It hasn't helped me. But he said, since you released that trapped emotion of anger for me, I just feel really different. I feel really relaxed. And things that used to set me off don't really set me off anymore. He said, how does that work? And at the time I said, well, I don't know, but here's what we believe. Okay. This guy had this ball of anger, this invisible frequency, this energy of anger in his low back. So when a situation would come along in his life where he might tend to feel that emotion, remember emotions are vibrations, he would fall right into that frequency, right into that feeling way more easily than he should have, because part of his body was feeling that emotion of anger, that frequency 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 20 years, right? So this is a completely different way of looking at emotions and how they affect us. But it's amazing how powerful it is. And one of the beautiful things about this work is that it also works on animals. And animals, there's no placebo effect. If you got an animal that's got a behavioral problem or some kind of a physical problem, and you use the emotion code, the chances are very good that you're going to fix whatever's going on with that animal, because 80% of their problems, physical and behavioral, are from emotional baggage. And it's a great proof of this work that it also works with animals.
It's interesting. Yeah, I heard one of those stories on one of your videos, and like that was fascinating to me. They got rid of the anger too. I think that was definitely interesting. One of the comments, I'm gonna caveman this question to you.
Okay.
Basically, I don't know what EMDR is, but I was in EMDR therapy to reprogram the way trauma is stored in my body. Is that the same as what Dr. Nelson is talking about?
Well, no, it works a little differently. EMDR is a great method, and it's used. It's definitely out of the mainstream as far as Western medicine goes. It's not a drug-based therapy or anything like that, but yeah, it definitely works. It's something that is it's closer to what we do than Western medicine is. Western medicine is mainly geared towards the suppression of symptoms. But Anthony, I'll tell you what I have found. Yeah. See, think about it this way. I'm sitting at my computer. I've got a screen and I've got a keyboard, right? And so I can see things on the screen and I can type in things on the keyboard. I can communicate with the computer. If I look at my phone, right, I've got icons on my phone. I can touch those icons. This is what we call a touch screen interface, right? The subconscious mind is a completely different kind of a computer. It's a computer that has no screen. How does it communicate with us? It communicates with us through the symptoms that we experience. When you have some kind of a symptom, mental, emotional, physical, that's the subconscious mind's way of communicating to you that there's something else going on that needs to be addressed. And so a symptom should be the beginning of a dialogue with this internal computer. But instead, most of the time in Western medicine, people are given drugs to suppress that voice and silence that voice, right? And so,
does that add to the, excuse me, sorry, does that add to the like the growth of the energy within you, more or less, for lack of better terminology, like the suppression or whatever terminology?
Well, it certainly doesn't help. Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you, if I had a nickel for every patient back in those days that would tell me, gee, I thought I dealt with all that. I could probably, we could probably both go to lunch somewhere nice. Get some barbecue in St. Louis.
Dude, I love the barbecue out here. No, it's interesting because I feel like I eat a lot of edibles and stuff, and I noticed that like it definitely masks my symptoms more so than it does. I mean, sometimes it solves them. I mean, to be honest, sometimes it lets me face them in an honest way. I'd be more like embarrassed about doing maybe potentially, but a lot of it's suppression too. And I noticed that to where, like, I mean, the grieving process, for example, like I wasn't smoking or eating edibles for like months, and then my mom passed away. And then I started smoking again because I just didn't want to be sad constantly. But then I feel like it's delaying the process of healing, which is annoying also. Like it's like I'm still dealing with like stuff. I mean, this was March, so I mean, still pretty recent, about 2 months ago. But I feel like I just went right back into like grind mode to not just be sad and laying around. I didn't want to like lay around and I feel like it ruined. I watched that ruin my mom's life, like when her dad passed away. So I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want it to ruin my life. And I feel like in a lot of ways, suppressing has been helpful. But then in a lot of ways, it has not been, because like I feel like I'm like limiting myself growth and healing wise long term. Yeah. Like in the short term, it was decent because like that. I mean, that first month was just, I was in shock the whole time, to be honest with you. So it was brutal dealing with that. But I mean, and it's still, I mean, in ways brutal. But I think it gets easier. But I think what is more or less I wanted to add a bunch of context before I ask the question. More or less, the question would be like, what would be better to handle the grieving process? Because I don't want to be intoxicated. Like I don't want to do that ever. I'll probably quit soon completely. And like, what is a good way to kind of handle that within your method that I could use per se?
Yeah. Well, you can learn the method. The emotion code is actually really simple. So I'll tell you how it works. And in fact, let me give your listeners and viewers something that they can actually try, okay, at home. The key to the emotion code and the body code and the belief code, the methods that we teach, is that you have to have a way to communicate and get answers from the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind is a different kind of a computer than any computer that we are used to, because it has no screen. It communicates through symptoms to us, but we can ask questions of it and we can get answers, provided that the answer to the question can be returned as a yes or a no. And I recently saw this old episode of Star Trek from the original series, and Captain Kirk finds this starship captain, Captain Pike, that was really injured, and he ends up in a box, and it's just his head sticking out of this box, and he's got a red light, and he can't speak. But if you ask him questions, he can light up the light twice for no and once for yes. And that's a binary kind of a system. And the subconscious mind can give you any answer you want as long as the answer is yes or no. So it took me a while to figure this out. And basically the way that it works is with the emotion code, what we do is we use this chart and we'll ask, do you have a trapped emotion that we can release? If you've got some kind of issue, you'd ask, do you have a trapped emotion we can release that's contributing to this issue for you, this problem, headache, migraine, whatever it is, low back pain, infertility, whatever. And then if the subconscious mind says yes through a strong muscle test, then you ask, is the emotion in column A? And if that's a no, that means it's in column B. And then you'll ask, is it in one of the odd rows? And if that's a no, then it's in an even row. So by asking these questions and getting yes and no answers, you're able to very quickly drill down to the emotion that is causing the trouble, right? And so to give you an idea, let me share a couple of experiences with you. One of the first people that I saw when I was figuring this stuff out was a woman that came in. She thought she was having a heart attack. She was a patient of mine. I'd seen her before, but it had been a few months. One day she comes in, she's got a difficulty breathing, crushing chest pain. Her left arm's totally numb. Left side of her face is totally numb. And I told my staff, look, we might need an ambulance. We were right next to a medical center. So I said, just give me 1 minute with her. And so I started doing some muscle testing and asking questions and found that she had a trapped emotion of grief, which is right here on the chart, right there. And I don't know if you can see that or not.
No, I can. Yeah, I think you have a blurred
There you
background.
go. Yeah, there we go. And so the question I was asking was, do you have a trapped emotion that's contributing to this problem that you're having? I mean, it looked like a full-blown heart attack. And then I asked, okay, we found that it was grief. And I asked, do we need to know more about this? The answer was yes. And so I started tracing it back, and through muscle testing found this had occurred 3 years before. And when I arrived at that, she burst into tears. And she says, I can't believe that's affecting me. I thought I dealt with all that. And I said, well, what in the world happened to you? She said that 3 years before, she found out her husband had been having an affair for some time and confronted him with the evidence, and the marriage blew up. And she was so betrayed because she really was in love with that guy and had no idea that he was cheating on her, etc. And that was the end of that marriage. She spent a year in therapy dealing with it mentally, and trying to put her life back together. And then she'd even recently gotten remarried. So as far as she was concerned, that guy was just her ex, right? It was all over. He's the guy that betrayed her, but it was over. She was moving on.
Well, love's sacred. Yeah, no, love's sacred. And like that's, it's deeper than that for sure.
Yeah. But the energy, that grief that she felt during that time was still with her. And it was creating these symptoms. So what I did is I just took a magnet and swiped it down her back a few times. And that's part of the process. And the feeling came back into her arm and into her face within about 3 seconds. And the chest pain, the difficulty breathing was all of a sudden just completely gone. She left the office about 10 minutes later after joking with me and my staff. And after she left, I remember sitting down at my desk and my head was spinning, thinking, what in the world did I just witness? How is it possible that an emotional energy from 3 years before, I mean, it would have put her in, it would have put her in the ER. But we now know that people die of a broken heart. The Japanese discovered this, and they called it Takotsubo syndrome. And a Takotsubo is a kind of a bell-shaped jar that the Japanese fishermen use to catch octopus. They put these jars on the bottom of the ocean, and then it's like a perfect little home for the octopus, but then, they end up as somebody's sushi. Well, it's amazing because on an X-ray, when someone is dying of a broken heart, the heart will assume this crazy shape. It looks exactly like one of those bell jars. So in the US, we call it cardiac syndrome. And so in her case, if she'd gone to the ER, they would have ran all the tests, and they would have said, well, we don't find your heart enzymes are normal. We don't know what was wrong with you. But that's a sign, see, that she was on her way to dying of a broken heart. That was like 30 years ago. She and I are still connected. We're still friends, and she's got a horse ranch in Oregon. But if we had not released that grief from her, from the betrayal of her husband, I don't think she'd still be alive. I think that she would have died of heart failure, died of a broken heart, and nobody would have known at the funeral that what really killed her was her husband's affair, right? So this is the kind of thing that you can find, and you can remove energies like this. You can release emotional baggage from your kids. Yeah, go ahead.
How would you suggest to remove grief, like, for example?
How would I suggest removing it?
Yeah, removing the negative energy, like this lady had.
Yeah. Well, what you need to do is you need to choose a way to communicate with the subconscious. Now, let me share something with your viewers and listeners. In the very beginning of the Emotion Code book, within the first few chapters, I teach everybody how they can do this in a really simple way. And it's a method that we call the sway test. So here's how it works. If you put a plant in a pot near a window, if you don't rotate the pot periodically, the plant is going to end up bent to one side because it wants that sunlight, right? That's a positive input for the plant. Organisms will respond to positive or negative input. And so a plant will bend away from really harsh negative grating sounds, for example, really loud noises. It will bend the other way. The human body has this capacity too. And what we can do is we can do something called the sway test, so that if you're standing up and you're very relaxed, if you're holding thoughts of truth or positivity or congruency, your body will tend to sway forward within about 3 to 10 seconds. If you're holding thoughts of negativity or falsehood or incongruency, your body will tend to sway backwards within about 3 to 10 seconds. And so I'll if you want, I can walk everybody through this and show them how it's done.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. Now, if you can't stand, you can try this sitting right on the edge of your chair. It works better if you're standing. So we'll assume everybody's standing. If you're driving right now, just play this back later. But if you can, stand up, drop your hands down to your sides, and take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Let it out. And you want to have your feet about shoulder width apart, okay? Now, we're going to start with something negative. Just, keep your eyes closed and just listen to me. If you got anything else going on, just let that go. And first of all, what you're going to notice is as you're standing there very relaxed, there's always a little teeny bit of movement going on in the body. You might move a little to the left or right or front or back. And that's just your postural muscles working to keep you from falling over. So they're always working to keep you standing up. But what I'd like you to do for a moment is I'd like you to think about something really negative. Now, about the most negative thing that I can think of is war. We've heard that war all of our lives, right? But for a moment, I'd like you to think about war as you're standing there very relaxed. I'd like you to think about what really goes on in war. Imagine trying to explain war to someone from another planet where war doesn't exist. What would you say? What are people doing to other people when there's a war going on? What are people of one uniform doing to people that wear another uniform? It's really legalized murder, right?
It is, yeah. It's disgusting.
So, yeah, it's disgusting. It's a terrible thing. And it's a blight on our planet. But think about what really goes on. Think about for a moment all of the tears that have been shed over all the wars that have been fought on this crazy, insane planet since the beginning. And think about all of the broken dreams and all the broken people and all the villages and cities destroyed and bombed and so on. And as you're thinking about war, the moment your subconscious mind starts to connect with what you're consciously thinking about, in that moment, your body will start to sway backwards. And that's your subconscious mind acting upon your physical body, trying to move you away from the sheer negativity of this thought of war. And so, again, it takes about 3 to 10 seconds for your body to respond. And what I'm trying to show you is that the body will respond to these things. Now, let's shift gears and try something really positive, okay? Let's imagine that 1,000 years have gone by. You're living 1,000 years in the future now. And you're in a place now where you're surrounded with unconditional, perfect love. But more than that, you have grown as a being, and you now have developed your own ability to give unconditional love to the extent that the love that fills your heart for all of creation and all beings is so big that your heart can't even contain that love. And that love expands out from your heart, and it goes out and it fills every crack and every crevice in the world. And it goes out even beyond this world, and it goes out and it radiates out from your core and fills the immensity of space. Just imagine for a moment what it would be like to be that level of being, to be able to radiate that kind of unconditional love. Think about that. Now, as you hold that thought in your mind, what that would feel like when your subconscious mind starts to connect with what you're consciously thinking about, your body will start to sway forward. And I know a lot of your listeners, a lot of your viewers are right on their tiptoes right now because that's pretty common. So we call this the sway test. So what you can do now is you now know that your body will respond. And when you ask questions of your subconscious mind, when you're standing relaxed in this position, your body will tend to sway forward for a yes answer and backward for a no answer. Now, there are a lot of other methods that we teach in the Emotion Code book and so on. We teach how to test other people when they stretch out their arm. We teach you different methods of self-testing so you can actually muscle test yourself. But you can use the sway test, what I just taught you, and you can ask questions like, do I have a trapped emotion that's contributing to my blank? Hold that thought in your mind for a moment. Whatever it is that might be going on with you. If you have some kind of a physical thing, you could ask, I have a trapped emotion that's contributing to my fill in the blank with a physical thing. Maybe it's not physical. Maybe it's something else. Do I have a trapped emotion that is contributing to my difficulty in finding my soulmate, or that's creating difficulty for me to find, to make enough money, or whatever it is, right? And if your subconscious mind sways forward, then you've got a trapped emotion. And you can use this same method to go through the chart and find the emotional baggage that you have. And once you identify a trapped emotion, you can release that by swiping with a magnet or your hand. If you're working on yourself, you'll start at the forehead and you go over the top of the head to the back of the neck 3 times, okay? If you're working on somebody else, you can do the same thing, or you can go straight down the middle of their back. There's a meridian, a little river of energy in the body called the governing meridian. It starts at the tailbone, goes straight up the back, over the top of the head to the inside of the upper lip. And we can use any length of that meridian to release a trapped emotion. And so the best analogy that I can give you for this is if I take a credit card out of my wallet, okay, if you look at this card, there's a magnetic strip there, right? And if you rub a magnet on that magnetic strip, what happens? You need a new credit card, right? Because that data is now scrambled and transformed. And that's essentially what you're doing when you're releasing a trapped emotion. So that's, in a nutshell, that's how it works, and that's how it's done.
No, yeah, you K-bend that really well, and it made sense to me. So magnets, yeah, I know they're super powerful, and that's interesting. So so you should put them along your head. You said like 3 times. You said like back.
Yeah, you can start at the forehead and just swipe over the back, top of the head, just a few times. Now there is one situation where we swipe more than 3 times. Sometimes when we are finding a trapped emotion, sometimes we're taken to a column in a row and we can't get a good answer, even though we know the emotion is in that row. And that's typically because the emotion was actually inherited. And so we now know that
I heard you speak about that too, like parents that will have like the traumas passed down through. That's interesting. Sorry to interrupt. You got me hyped up. I called back. Yeah.
No, not at all. So we inherit emotional energies. All of us do. At the moment of conception from our mom or dad, sometimes both. And these are energies that they might have received when they were conceived from their mom or dad. And these can go back for multiple generations. And it's really interesting. It's a quantum phenomenon. I think it was about 15 years ago. I think it was in Atlanta that at the university there, they were doing studies on mice. And what they would do is they'd take a group of mice, and one group of mice they would actually subject to kind of a mild electrical shock when they would also blow in the scent of cherry blossom. And pretty soon the mice became afraid of cherry blossom scent, and all they had to do was blow that scent in and they would all freeze and have fear reactions. So what they found was these mice would somehow pass that information on to their offspring for generation after generation. And they didn't know how that was working. So what they did is they took sperm from these mice that had been sensitized, And they took the sperm across the campus and they impregnated female mice that had never smelled cherry blossom in their whole lives, and they'd never been shocked. And yet their offspring were sensitized. And if their offspring smelled cherry blossom, they'd immediately have a fear reaction. And so the scientists, it blew everybody's minds because they're thinking, okay, how in the world is this possible? There's some mechanism at work here that we do not understand. Well, there have been books written about the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, that they're very different from normal people. They didn't go through the Holocaust, but their grandparents did. And so they've got changes in their DNA and their immune systems. They're much more susceptible to illnesses and things. And their markers for aging are accelerated because of what the grandparents went through. Now, Western medical science has no explanation for this. And the reason for that is because this is a quantum phenomenon, see? And it's inherited emotional energies that are being passed down. And so that's another really cool thing that you can do with the emotion code, because we all have inherited emotional baggage. You know, we've all got ancestors, and a lot of our ancestors went through difficult things. But now you can find that kind of baggage and you can get rid of it using the emotion code, and anybody can learn it. It's really simple.
Yeah, it's funny, the passed down thing. Like the only thing I can think of that I probably have is like I'm of like I mean, my grandmother was Irish and stuff, and I really hate royalty. Like I don't hate a lot of things, but I hate royalty. Like whenever like I hate even calling this guy that Charles of like England or whatever, like parades around in like a tea set outfit and like it reveals like a painting. I'm just like repulsed by it. Like I'm completely repulsed by all things royalty. And then I looked into the potato famine, and it seemed like they were just trying to starve the Irish into coming, and they all left and came here is what it seemed like. And like I don't know how much is correlated with that or how much is fantasy, but I'm completely repulsed by any kind of royalty. Like I'm a Christian other than like Christ being king. Like everything else repulses me, to be honest. Like and it's really weird to me that like. And I would almost like when you said the passed down thing, that's the first thing that triggered in my mind. I don't know if it's real, but it seemed real when you said that. Like,
well, it's very possible that you have some inherited emotional baggage. And what's interesting is that, you know, the emotional energies that we end up trapping, our emotional baggage, it's not only from our own life, but it's also oftentimes from our ancestors. And so it's like we go through life dragging all this luggage, you know, behind us from our own emotional baggage. But then a lot of us have, you know, suitcases and old steamer trunks and things, figuratively speaking. That's all the old inherited emotional energy. You know, let me tell you a story. I had a really powerful experience one day. This work can be done at a distance, right? And that's part of what we teach, because it's quantum work, it's energy work. And so energy is not bound by distance at all. And so one day, it was a couple of years after the Emotion Code book first came out. So this would have been in 2009. I asked my daughter, Natalie, to work on me and release whatever she could find. And I'm sitting, you know, I was sitting at home here in Utah. She was in Seattle. And so she said she would, hung up the phone. And so she tunes into me and starts working on me at a distance. And the first thing that she finds is an inherited trapped emotion of hopelessness. And she starts feeling emotional herself. Well, I had passed it to her when she was conceived, and that came out later. But anyway, so she does some more testing and finds that I got this from my father when I was conceived. He got it from his mother when he was conceived, and she got it from her mother, and she got it from her mother. And my daughter tested this. It went back 22 generations. And all of a sudden, when my daughter arrives at the point of origin of this energy, all of a sudden she can feel there's someone standing next to her, and she knows who it is. It's that grandmother from 22 generations back. And she can feel her emotion. She can feel how desperate she is to have this emotional energy released from her posterity. That's what she passed on to everybody. Who knows what she went through? But my daughter could also feel how overwhelmed with gratitude this woman was that this was being done. And so she releases that trapped emotion. We swipe 10 times like this for an inherited trapped emotion, because we're releasing it not only from the living, but also from those that have passed on, which sounds crazy, but My daughter could feel that release from that ancestor, and she could feel it ripple through all those generations. So for me, what happened was one of the most profound healings that I've experienced in my life. We're not even on the phone, but she's working on me. And all of a sudden, when that was released, I knew it. I knew the moment it was released, because all my life I had this background, low-level feeling of hopelessness. And I could never put my finger on it. I knew I struggled. When I was writing the Emotion Code book 2 years before this, if anyone would have asked me to describe that project in one word without any hesitation whatsoever, I would have used the word hopeless. I would have said, well, it feels totally hopeless, but I'm continuing, putting one foot in front of the other. That's exactly how I felt. In fact, when I would go to write, I would have to take at least a half an hour, sometimes an hour, to just watch really positive, motivational things, tapes, videos, YouTube, whatever, to get elevated enough that I could start to write. And so that's what happened to me. It changed my life in an instant. Now, it changed my daughter's life too. She is one of the most gifted painters and artists that I've ever met. I mean, I could show you things mind-blowing, just incredible things that she's done. But she, until that moment, had never painted a thing. About a year later, after that energy, that hopelessness, that 500-year-old hopeless energy was released from her, she had an art showing in Seattle. My wife and I flew up there for it. And here's all this artwork just pouring out of her. It was just unbelievable. And I think that she probably, if she had not had that emotional energy released, I think it's very likely that she would have, lived her whole life and never painted a thing. That talent would have stayed buried her whole life. So you think about your own life, right? What kind of emotional baggage do you have? What kind of baggage do you have from your ancestors? I mean, maybe you're Jewish and they went through pogroms, or maybe you're Black and your parents were slaves, or maybe you're from the Slavic countries, and that actually comes from the word slave, right? Or slave comes from Slavic. So the point is, our ancestors all went through difficult things. Mine were Irish too, and so the whole potato famine thing, mine went through that and finally came to the U.S. Because of that, around that time. And so it's a really interesting thing. But that's part of what you can do with the Emotion Code, along with working on animals, which is really fun.
No, that's interesting. And I sometimes wonder if this. I haven't seen so like I said, I'm not very versed in this, so my imagination may be limited by actual things that are proven. But I'm just saying, I feel like the subconscious, or mentioning the subconscious, is very similar to just talking to the soul directly. It's almost bypassing the human organs, because I've seen are you familiar with Journey of Souls and stuff like that?
Well, what I believe is that that word subconscious is really just another word for the spirit within us. When we die, the spirit lives on. Lots of people have had experiences. In fact, let me tell you something, Anthony. Every place I go, and I do seminars all over the world, every group that I'm with, I always ask one question, and that is, have any of you had an experience where you died temporarily, you left your body, and you could actually look back down and see your body? And in every group, it's typically about 3 to 5% of the people that have had that experience. And it's a real thing. I mean, we're spirit beings having a physical experience in this world. And I had an experience one day that was it was really amazing. I was in my practice, just working, with a patient in command. It was just a routine visit, and I had this habit of asking for help, and so I did that just silently. And then I turned my attention to this patient, and all of a sudden, it's like my spiritual eyes are opened somehow, and I understand suddenly that I'm standing in the presence of this sacred thing, this sacred edifice, the temple of the body. And it just filled me with the deepest sense of reverence and awe instantly. And then a few seconds later, it was like that window closed. But I've never, ever forgotten that. That's the reality, see, in this world. There's a higher reality that we're not aware of. but we're divine beings, and these bodies of ours are temples. And so, you know, sometimes I used to think of myself just as a temple repairman, you know, trying to figure out what's wrong
Ah,
with this person's temple, you know.
yeah. No, that's interesting. It's like, like I believe in that heavily. Like I'm a Christian, but I also believe in like that we've been here multiple times, and I think I
Yeah.
believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in one of your videos you're talking about how you picked this life beforehand and stuff like that too. Was that you? I was listening to earlier. Is that also a lot of books?
Yeah, I definitely believe that. I think that our
I thought I
life
heard you say that. Yeah.
yeah, I think our life is planned and plotted out. I think that we, you know, with our Father in heaven, God, I think that He's our Father and our life is planned out. And so the family we're born into and the people, experiences that we have, I think are all designed for us to get, for us to be able to grow the most, right? And it's like Tony Robbins says, you know, life doesn't happen to you, life happens for you. And so, you know, what are we going to do? Life is God's gift to us, and then our gift to Him is what we do with our lives, right? And but I also believe that we've been here more than once. I think that we've been here. My own twist on this, my own take on this is I think that we've all been here in the capacity of angels helping other people go through their mortal experience. And because sometimes we find emotional baggage from prior to conception, and I think that a percentage of the time that's what that's from. So there's obviously a lot that, you know, that we don't know, but I do believe that, you know, I've read a lot of near-death experiences where somebody dies and they're not only, you know, looking down or looking over and seeing their body there, but they're also seeing other beings that that they recognize often later as, you know, great great grandpa who's been dead for 20
Mm.
years, or sometimes what happens is they'll see a young man, for example, there. I've read a story recently about this. They see this person dies, sees this young man there that's just kind of watching. And then they have, you know, later they're, you know, a baby comes to their family, a baby boy. And then about when that kid turns around 18 or 19, all of a sudden they recognize him. Oh my gosh, that was, now I recognize that's the person that I saw. It was, you know, my own son that was yet to be born. So crazy stories like this, I think, are so fun, right? And help us to kind of get little clues about what the reality of our existence really is. So yeah, fun stuff.
Oh, it's interesting. I actually remember picking this life. Like I remember like picking between a couple lives, and I remember like coming down this like translucent water slide, but then like being whitewashed by like with the birth and stuff like that. I remember a lot of that.
Oh, no kidding. That's
Yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah. It was weird. I remember that without being hypnotized. Like that was just something that came to me. Like, and then I started. The more I started speaking about it on the show, the more people that I find tend to share a similar belief that we pick this life and our soul continues and like blah. Like it was a weird thing. Like after I started speaking about it, like a lot of people tend to think that way now.
Yeah.
Like it's that I didn't realize prior to asking him directly. And no, it's definitely interesting. And I think that the out of body experience you described. My mom told me she had that like 2 years ago when she first was pronounced dead, like in the hospital.
Oh, really?
She said that she saw my sister by her side, like crying and like freaking out. And I think my mom had a lot of unresolved things that she handled these last 2 years and stuff like that. Because I think
Mhm.
it's weird. It's weird. Like just in having the whole story now, it seems like maybe she was supposed to probably die then, but then like had like to handle some unresolved things first. And I think she did handle most of it.
Mhm.
Like, not, I mean, everybody wants to live forever. I'm not trying to act like you're resolving everything all the time. She was
Sure.
57, so I mean, there's plenty of life. But I'm saying like she talked to me about that, and I think her and my sister had this thing like this. They never came up with the code, but they talked about how they were supposed to talk to each other like after that and stuff. And I think
Mm.
and a lot of mediums have been telling me that like she's around me constantly, and I feel it a
Yeah.
lot. And then an exorcist will tell me that like basically everyone already went to heaven. These are demons, basically, and it freaks me out a little bit too because like he kind of like he's under the belief that he's pretty big on like TikTok and stuff. He goes by Demon Eraser. He's like a modern day like exorcist. He would say that basically a lot of these like demons or fallen angels or whatever they call themselves
Mhm.
will parade around with like sense and similar energy to like loved ones, and will trick people and into like weird decisions, which I mean, I think both exist more so rather than just. I don't think only evil exists. You know, I think it's kind of both, and I think like I don't know. My mom was trapped in a chair for so long that I think she'd want to see. I like a lot. Like I had like orbs around me right after she passed. Where I was like, I'm like riding a bike to the gas. I ride e-bikes everywhere, and like I ride an e-bike. My wife just thinks it's funny to tape me because thinks I look funny on a bike or something. But she like taped me and then like looked at it later, and there's like orbs and then like I mean, just it feels like I definitely have ancestors backing me, and I definitely have like a guardian angel kind of thing too. I think so. I believe in that. I believe in that sense because like certain things will just. And I've seen them. I mean, I've been around a dying person for 4 years. So I mean, I basically saw them around her house constantly. You know what I mean? Like just lights and but lights looking through me and stuff, and just like looking through me as in they live in truth, and I live in this like weird diluted version of that. I mean, I like to be authentic and truthful, but I am a human and I'm flawed. You know, in the aspects of that. But I've seen like lights stare through me and like basically know me better than I know me, which is weird, and I feel pretty transparent with myself as well. But there's just I definitely had a lot of experiences like that. I don't know. That's kind of a different subject for different podcasts, but I was just kind of like relating to a lot of what you said about that, like the near death experiences and such, like you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, you know, my our family actually has an interesting thing that happened. My this is probably, oh gosh, let's see, probably about 40, maybe 35, 40 years ago. My
How old
my
are you for context?
I'm 67.
Oh wow, okay, yeah. No, when you said that, I didn't realize. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm getting old. Anyway,
No, it's awesome. It's a luxury. I didn't put you at that age. So when you said 35 years ago, I was just kind of like, I'm 37, so I'm just kind of like, what? Oh yeah, so okay, but not to
yeah.
interrupt your entire story. Sorry.
No. Well, anyway, my grandfather died when I was I think about 5 years old, 1963.
wow.
I guess I was 6.
That's super
And
young.
yeah, and I can remember being at his funeral. Well, about 20 years after that, my cousin Vicky was having a real difficult time with her marriage and, you know, and religion, and just didn't know what to do, and was just really, she didn't know if she should stay with her husband Mike or not, didn't know what to do, and was just sitting on her bed one day just kind of feeling really heavy and pondering all this. And our grandfather walked into the room. He's been dead for a long time, right? But he walks in the room. He's dressed in white. Looks like he's about 30 years old or so, which is typical of people. You know, that's what everybody says. They go to the other side, and everybody looks like they're in their prime, and that's the case here.
I have chills right now. No, it's crazy.
Yeah, he walks into the room. He sits down in a chair at the foot of her bed, and he just starts counseling her and telling her she needs, you know, she needs to keep going to church. She needs to stay with Mike. It's all going to work out. And sure enough, you know, they've been married for a long time now. And, you know, and they've had a phenomenal marriage, great marriage. And, but the interesting thing is what he told her about her dad. Now, her dad was my father's brother, and he was the youngest. And when he was being raised, my grandfather was a traveling salesman. And so he was gone all the time, and he wasn't there enough, I think. And so, and my uncle at the time was kind of living, you know, sort of a wild, kind of a hedonistic lifestyle. So my grandfather tells my cousin Vicky, he says, listen, he said, I want you to go to your father, and I want you to tell him I'm sorry that I wasn't there more for him when I was alive. But I want you to go and tell him that I'm sorry, but it's time for him to, you know, to get his life together and start living right. And so then, you know, he just, I guess, kind of disappeared. She goes immediately to her dad and tells him the story, and they both just wept, and he immediately turned his life around, you know. So
that's awesome. That's amazing.
So, hey, things happen.
No, we had similar things in my family too. Like my grandfather sat down a couple of my cousins. At the end of the bed thing was similar. I don't know if he walked in. I don't know the terminology of like or how he got around. That was not in the story, but the sitting on the bed was, which is a common link. And like I have dreams with my ancestors a lot. And like my grandfather like apologized to me in a dream about dying when I was young,
Wow.
and not because my mom was like 25 when he died. So like he apologized, like, and I was complaining to my wife about how like kind of childish, like I don't want to say this on video, but I mean how like kind of childish my family is, the nicest way of saying it, and they're all women and stuff, and not no disrespect, I love each and every one of them, but they're kind of childish, and I was complaining about my wife to that, and like it was weird for me to say that because I was kind of childish most of my life, I still kind of am, but it was like but I remember like complaining to her about that, and then that night in my dream, like I remember him like coming to me and apologizing. He's like, sorry, I died really, when you were really young, and like I wish I would have took better care of myself and stayed around a little bit longer because it really messed up the family. And he's like thanking me for getting it back together because we started like having like all these like his side of the family like basically didn't talk to each other for 20 years, and I started getting them all back together and stuff for like holidays, and I'm very
Mm.
close. I'm way closer with them now, which is a blessing. And I remember like when I was taking care of my mom, like I would like she would just like argue like a child with me, like very, very, very. She was always a teenager. Like she was 57, but she was still like a teenager. And I remember
Yeah.
him like addressing that in a dream. And then I've since seen her in dreams too. Like the week she passed away, I saw her like lounging around me everywhere in my dream. Like I would be like with touring with comedians and stuff, and like in these comedians. It's funny, I haven't yet toured with these comedians, but I have been talking to them, and which is kind of weird. And then like I saw her like laying on couches and in passenger seats of cars and like and stuff like that. And then and I thought that was like her getting better. I'm like, oh wow, she's actually getting better. So I'll see her. Some of my dreams are predictive, and so I had that dream in the night, and then she passed that week. But then I've since like realized that that's just her around me, watching me do like rock star stuff. Just like she's kind of like, I think she's very proud of me and very kind of like she molded me for this, like
Yeah.
she was into radio, bro. She was
Yeah.
she went to the broadcast center, and I went into podcasting and stuff. And so it's really, I'm probably living her dream. I noticed after she passed away, didn't know prior, that I'm
Uh,
probably like in a lot of ways. I mean, I love it, don't get me wrong, but I'm probably living her dream in a lot of ways. And I felt that dream was telling me she was going to be around me and watching me, and like and just kind of like watching like the Earth show, like whatever,
mm.
like and I have a lot of dreams like that too, like people talk to me in dreams after they pass, like which is kind of interesting. And I believe maybe that, I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm on the out of my body in that world or something, and other times I think they come to me. It just depends on the day and the mood what my belief is on that. But it feels real, and not all of them are real, and not all of them are true, but they all feel real and true. Like
Yeah.
like I'll predict certain things, like but not like big, not like lotto numbers or something, but like just I'll see things happen or places before I go there. Like
Yeah.
I went to this deli. I already knew where everything was. It was weird because I'd never been there my entire life, but I already saw it in a dream and knew where like everything was. I knew where the bathroom was. I knew where like everything. It was just weird that I knew it already.
Cool.
You ever
Well,
have
that's
stuff like
awesome.
that?
Yeah, I haven't had things like that, but I've heard voices on many occasions, And I'll tell you something. What I believe is that that the voices that we hear, and the guidance that we get is usually from the angels around us, typically. And
Definitely.
those angels that are around us, I think, usually are our departed loved ones, or maybe someone that has not been born yet, that's been assigned to us. I think that's kind of how it works. And I remember one day I was sitting in my office here, and all of a sudden I heard a voice, very distinct voice, and it said, Drew, we have a son named Drew. Drew should go to school and study to become an EMT, an emergency medical tech. And I looked around. Of course, there was nobody there. I went in the next room, and I told my wife, I said, you wouldn't believe what I just heard. And she said, oh, that's interesting. I was just talking to Drew last week, and he said he might want to become an EMT. She didn't tell me that. Right.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
Friend of mine had an experience. He was kind of picking his way along, driving along this very, very foggy road, a 2-lane road. And all of a sudden he hears this voice that says, get off the road now. And so he immediately pulls over. And right then a car comes by in his lane at a high rate of speed, going the other direction. And he said, he told me, he said, yeah, I would have been killed, I think, for sure, if I hadn't gotten off the road. So, those little voices that we hear are, from those angels around us. And it's something I think we usually want to pay attention to. There can be bad voices too. We can hear good ones or bad ones. And So if you ever hear a voice telling you, oh, you should kill yourself or you should do something that's, really wrong, then, that's coming from the other side, I think.
Yeah, both angels just some fallen and fired, right? But I know that that's funny. You like the I see that a lot too. Like the like just like I was at the gym. Like when I moved back, I live in a bus like that a school bus that turned into a house. And like for context, and like I was at the gym and like this and like I heard my full name. And like no one at the gym knows my full name, I don't think anyway. Well, a couple people listen to the podcast. Maybe not this guy, not the guy that talked to me. So I heard like Anthony Rogers. They said, and I'm like weird that somebody said my entire name at this place because I'm not really. And the guy whose attention was drawn after that doesn't even probably know my name. He knows it in Greek. He always calls me Adonis, which is like the Greek version of that. And like so he wouldn't even know my last name or anything. I heard that. I looked up. And he said my full name, and he was like drawn to me, came over to me, and his name's Michael, which is funny, like one of the angels. His actual name's Michael, and like he was, which is weird because he's atheist, but also he came up to me and was telling me, he was like, somehow I found out I was poisoning myself in my bus with the heating system I did, and like because I was like I was really around that time I was leaving. Taking care of my mom full time, and I was kind of like sickly looking just from like the depression and like not eating a lot of food and stuff. And then I was getting like sick, like kind of, and I was realizing it was from gas. And like, and it was funny that like whatever it is wants me here, like whatever energy it is around here wants me here for like something or bigger things or even my own life path. I'm not sure, or all the above, because like I have weird signs like that all the time. Like as a comedian, like I don't condone any of these next things I'm about to say. Like as a comedian, I'll eat a lot of edibles because I'm bored driving all the time. And you should never do that while driving. I'm not condoning that. But I did this like, and I haven't done that in years, but I did that driving through Illinois. And like I heard like this like monologue, or I guess I wasn't in it, so it was a monologue, like explaining how I'm smart enough to do this, but how I shouldn't do this. Like how basically I shouldn't. I should, how dangerous it is and how stupid I am, but more positive words. I'm paraphrasing, but basically just telling me that I'm a fool for doing this. And then my grandmother predicted some stuff like that too. My grandmother was like that. Like she predicted like my mom and her sisters wanted to get on this like camper. You remember those old campers? Like it was like it was a truck that hauled it on top. Like had like a.
Yeah.
It was
Sure.
all weird how campers used to be before they were like one unit or whatever.
Yeah.
They were all trying to get in there and play in there like during a drive or something like that, which they've done probably a million times. And my grandma like yelled at her and was like, you better. And that's out of character for my grandma. My grandma never lost her cool really, and was just like, you are not gonna be back there or whatever terminology. I wasn't there. And like basically later on that day, the trailer camper shell thing fell off on the highway. And they would have like died. So I mean, there's so much of this around you to even. I mean, everyone probably has a story like this, but they're kind of like embarrassed to talk about it and be themselves, unless it's acceptable, and what's on a weird show like this or something like that. But most people probably don't. Or with their good friends or something. Most people probably don't ever address these. I've realized because of how common they were once I started talking about them. Because like I felt like this like crazy person explaining it at first, and then like you just said you had similar stories of like. 2 or 3 of the things we're talking about, and like I just met you today, So I mean, how many other people are having these experiences? Is more or less what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, I think probably everybody has these things.
I think that too. The comments, someone said I've had voices fix MRI machines late at night for me. Strange stuff next to big magnetic field. So I mean, people are having like experience. I mean, I bet a lot of. I mean. We're all God's like animals, or whatever terminology. Like I think that a lot of people are probably experiencing angels and whatever else,
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. Speaking of animals, let me tell you an animal story.
Yeah.
I got a call one day to work on this horse, and my practice was just working on people, but occasionally people would call me, and so I got this call. I got out of the stable. And they've already had the vet look at this horse, couldn't find anything wrong. And the problem that the horse has is that there's something wrong with its hindquarters. And it's a dressage horse. So, it has to be in tune with the rider and so on. And the horse's hind end is kind of going one direction and the front end's going another direction. And but nothing obviously wrong. So anyway, when you work on a horse, and you learn how to do this in the Emotion Code book, you can work on any animal that you want. But what I would do is I'd have one person touch the horse, and then I'd have them hold their arm out parallel to the floor. And then I would talk to the horse, and their arm, no matter how hard they tried, their arm would go weak when a no answer was coming from the horse's intelligence. And it
Whoa.
was
So
strong for yes.
you can measure them through a person, like an animal through a person. You're saying with your method?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah. Oh, I'm telling you, it works.
Oh, I
So
believe it.
anyway,
It's crazy.
yeah. So check it out. So I'm asking questions of this horse. I find out, first of all, that the horse has a trapped emotion of sadness, which is right there in column A, row 3, right? The horse is answering these questions. When I would work on an animal back then, usually I would start by asking the animal, like this horse, I think its name was Ranger. I would say, is your name Ranger? And then it would be strong for yes, right? If that's the animal's name. And then I asked, okay, do you have a trapped emotion? The answer was yes. The emotion was sorrow, actually, is what it was, sorrow. And so I'm asking other questions. Now, this would always, a little crowd would always gather when I would come down to the stable and work on a horse, because it was the crazy doctor talking to the animal, the whole Dr. Doolittle thing. And so I'm asking questions. Well, was it sorrow about another horse? And the person's arm goes weak that's touching the horse, right? Was it sorrow about a human being? No, that's not it. It was also weak. Was it about a dog? No. Cat? No. And I'm kind of running out of ideas. And all of a sudden a bird flies over. And so I thought, well, all right. Was it sadness about a bird? And the answer came back rock solid, right? And I actually burst out laughing, and so did everybody else, because it seemed just kind of silly, right? That a horse would have sorrow about a bird.
It's kind of awesome, though.
Right. Well, the owner of this horse was there, and she said, wait a minute. She said, I think I know what this is about. The week before, right in front of this horse's stall was a little roadway, and a baby bird fell out of its nest and fell down onto the ground on this little roadway right in front of this horse's stall and struggled for its life and eventually died. Now, the horse was there and was a mute witness to this whole little tragedy that played out. And so I tested and I asked, okay, is that what this is about? Rock solid. Took a magnet and then released it by just going down the middle of the horse's back a few times, right? And then they took it out and, it was perfect. All the trouble was gone, see? And so that story is actually in the Emotion Code book.
Giving us the samples, huh? Giving us some samples of the work. What kind of magnet would you suggest? Is are these thin, like frigid magnets too weak, or like are the big block ones too strong? Is there any kind of like?
The interesting thing is it doesn't make any difference what kind of magnet you use. We've tried all magnets. And if you got a Hello Kitty magnet from your kid, or you got a plumber magnet on your fridge from your plumber, those will both work just fine. You can use expensive magnets if you want to, but you can also use the cheapest magnet you can find. We've tried them all. We've tried all polarities. We've tried all strengths, from like rare earth magnets to, really inexpensive, really cheap ones. They all work just fine. And actually, we found that you don't even really need to use a magnet if you don't have one. It's okay, because our hands are also biomagnetic. And so you can just use your hand. Okay. And if you got a magnet, you use the magnet if you want to. You don't have to. So in fact, this is a magnet that we sell on our website.
That's hilarious. So you have a magnet with the symptoms on it. That's genius. That's genius branding, bro.
Yeah, it just has the chart on it, and you can buy these. And we're producing these in different languages now, because the Emotion Code book is in many languages all over the world. And the amazing thing about it is, no matter where I travel, I was in Japan this last fall and in Taiwan, and we'll be in Kazakhstan this fall. We'll be in Europe for a couple of months teaching. We'll be doing seminars in London and in Romania, in Bucharest, in Milan, Lisbon, in Portugal, and I think Barcelona in Spain, or maybe Madrid. I can't remember. And also Germany. But anyway, and all that's available on our site at discoverhealing.com. You can go there and look at events. If you happen to be in Europe, we'd love to have you come. Any one of those. But anyway, everywhere I go, people come up to me and they tell me how this has changed their life, and how they've fallen in love and gotten married since they did this, or they're making more money, or they got rid of their physical problems, whatever it was. It's really the most amazing thing, Anthony. And, what's really great about it is that it has nothing to do with me. My ego's not in it. I just work here. I'm just the workaholic doctor that I really truly believe that this was my mission to do this in this world, to bring this work into the world at a time when, we really desperately need it. I mean, we can all see how bankrupt Western medicine is in so many ways, right? I mean, it's crazy what's gone on over the last few years. It's opened a lot of people's eyes to, to the corruption that's going on with big pharma and so on.
Bro, yeah, not to dwell on that so much for myself, from my point of view, but man, like, yeah, dude, every nurse was like morbidly obese, pushing pills that I met through my mom. Like, for my mom, it was like, it's like this person that can't even walk through the door, being like, "Here's how to be healthy," and I'm like, how do you know? It was like so crazy to me, and like, I don't understand. Like, I think I mean, pharmakeia is a Greek word for sorcery. I mean, basically,
Yeah,
the pharmacy is
exactly.
based upon. So it's, I mean, to me, it's like, I feel like it's like spells or something, like, to where people are just like I don't know how anyone paying attention can't see it, but no one. I mean, there's a lot of people that can't see it. Like, I don't know how. I don't know how people can't. And here's the thing: they also perform miracles sometimes. I'm not trying to knock
Yeah,
them, but like
absolutely.
I'd argue they're 20% miracles and 80% like fluff. But I mean, and that's a stat I just made up. I mean, it has no relevance or measurement at all. But I mean, yeah, no, it's crazy. And I feel like we're gonna talk. I'll end up going down this rabbit hole for 9 more hours if we don't get out. Like, throw some promo out before I waste your entire evening with my ideas.
No, sure. People can find us at discoverhealing.com. We have the emotion code book, which is available, of course, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. The book is also available on Audible. Tony Robbins does the forward for the book. He did the forward for it, and also did
Wow, that's awesome.
he also did the Audible forward. And then I have another book called The Body Code, and the Body Code is about how you can use the subconscious mind to unlock everything else going on with you, including emotional baggage. So you can find out if you've got some kind of nutritional deficiency, or if you've got, a parasite or a misalignment of something, or some kind of a toxin, or whatever it is. We now finally, for the first time in human history, recorded history anyway, we've cracked the code. We now have these books are really like the Rosetta Stone for the subconscious mind that anybody can use, anybody can learn. And that's the whole point of this. We're moving into an age now where the theme is really empowerment, personal empowerment. That's what we're doing. Our company purpose, our statement that we say every Monday morning is healing the world by empowering you. See, because there are never going to be enough doctors to heal the world. It has to happen from a grassroots level, and that's exactly what's happening with this work. So it's a lot of fun.
No, I love that energy, man. And I was hyped when I heard about you. Like, one of my friends and publicists like introduced me to your work and stuff, and I was pretty hyped about having you on here. And like, you did not disappoint. I was just like nerding out the whole time, like I'm watching the TED talk. But I had the honor of being able to communicate as well, and I think that's a privilege and a pleasure being able to do that. And I also appreciate like all the sponsors and everybody watching. Otherwise, this would be delusional. This would just be like a Zoom call, and like it would be completely delusional without the viewers. So I appreciate you guys spending your Tuesday doing this. I mean, it depends on what time on the East Coast. It's 11 o'clock right now. So if you're watching this on the East Coast, you're watching this at 11 o'clock, and that's crazy and amazing to me. So thank you, and I appreciate you again, Doctor, for taking the time to go backwards in your career and be here. We'll sign your probation papers so you get credit for this. And
Thank you, Anthony. This has been really fun. First thing I'm going to do is go to YouTube and start watching. You've got videos on there of you doing your shows, right?
oh yeah. No, I do that, and like I've been using Rumble lately because of
Okay.
the fascism of words against words. But I mean, yeah, I'm still there. But yeah, for yes, I'm still there to answer your question
Cool.
without
Yeah,
getting
and
too
I'm
biased.
on Rumble, so yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah, I love
Thank
that
you
free
so
speech
much.
thing. I'm very American. I love that free speech thing. And no,
Yeah,
I appreciate you coming here, brother. And thank you very much. It's
all
Dr.
right.
Bradley Nelson, everybody. Check out his books. Check out his website, drbradleynelson.com, discoverhealing.com. If you're listening to this, links in the description on this episode. We got a big bio of his work and links to his stuff. Thank you again for joining us, brother.
Thank you, Anthony. You take care.
You
Appreciate
too,
it.
bro. Bam. And thank you all again for watching this at home or listening to this later. That guest is awesome, and I'm gonna actually listen to his audiobook like I want to work out probably tomorrow. He said it was on Audible, and I am illiterate, so I will listen to that while I work out and like kind of multitask. I love the concept of it. It's a privilege and a pleasure being able to talk to such cool people that have like a lot going on, and like that doctor was very positive. It seemed like I don't know, a lot of my experience with people with doctorates, they're not as like positive really or intelligent. This guy was pretty on point, and I think that it was awesome. I hope you guys watching enjoyed it too. And we got some comments look like found by accident. Love the show. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Always nice when a new person finds a show, and you found a good episode too. This one's a super chill. I learned a lot. I felt like, I mean, I watched a lot of his videos too. So, but I mean, I learned a lot of new stuff too on top of that. Thank you, Jenny, for getting off work early to watch this. I appreciate you, and thank you everyone that commented, watched, all that. I'm gonna pretend like I have things to do now, and I'll see you tomorrow. Love you all, and God bless you, and have a great night.